in the fight against food insecurity. As I go on, globally, around 14% of food produced is lost between harvest and retail, while an estimated 17% of total global food production is wasted. 11% is wasted in households, 5% in the food service, 2% in retail. And the Food and Agricultural Organization says that if we stopped wasting all that food, we'd save enough to feed the 2 billion hungry people. That is twice the number of undernourished people in the world of today. Production of more food will lead to more wastage, which is not good for us. We have enough food to feed the hungry 2 billion. Why do we need to produce even more food? We don't. We just need to save on what we have. We need to maximize. Ladies and gentlemen, we are talking about sustainability. Are we really growing towards sustainability, or are we creating more waste? Ladies and gentlemen, look at it in this way. If we manage to maximize what we have right now, if we manage to save the food we have right now, if we manage to stop the wastage of food we have right now, we can be able to replace the food that was supposed to be given to those people, and we will give them, and they will stop being hungry. So GMOs are not critical in the fight against food insecurity because we have food. We can grow food. We have agricultural industries. We just have to back them up with more funds. We just have to help farmers to grow better foods. You're talking about nutritional value. Okay, it's fine, but we are talking about food insecurity. And the foods we plant in the farm have nutritional value, and it depends on the standards at which the farmer is planting these foods on. If we manage to help the farmers plant these foods at high standards, they will have this nutritional value, and if we manage to support them, they will reach where we want them to reach. So, ladies and gentlemen, GMOs are not critical in the fight against food insecurity. It's that simple. Thank you. Second proposal.
Good afternoon, assalamu alaikum, ladies and gentlemen. I am from the Duke of Gloucester, aka the Green Army, aka Jamhuri High School. You see, one day, this tie was fully green. But because of the campus flavor, a yellow vine creeping in our administration block, we had to adapt. We had to change. So what did we do? We encrypted yellow stripes on our ribbons. We encrypted yellow stripes on our ties to fit with the prevailing condition, and I'm sure we can all agree the boys do look stunning. You see, once Mother Earth was green, but now it is not. Why? Yellow stripes, food insecurity, and what is the solution? Genetically modified foods. On to my first point. As my first speaker clearly stated, food insecurity is the state of being without reliable access to sufficient quantity of affordable, nutritious food. Reliable access to sufficient food. As many as 828 million people still go hungry. This is according to the UN Food Security Search from 2016 up to date. And you want to know why? Because, as she has stated, 17% of our organic foods get spoiled. So what does GMO offer? It offers longer shelf life for these foods. Therefore, these foods can be stored without getting expired than the organic foods, which we plant, they get spoiled, they do not help us. But genetically modified foods help us. See, take it this way. There are only two types of food. Organic foods have failed. What is the only other option? Genetically modified foods, and yet you say it is not critical. A man to the ICU cannot live on himself. What is left? A life support machine. Genetically modified foods. And then, as my first speaker stated, he said sustainability. He talked about sustainability. They are the ones, just before we went for lunch, talked about the problems of climate change and so on and so on. So what are some of the effects of climate change? It gives us unpredictable food patterns that lead to food insecurity. But production of food, genetically modified foods, is predictable. So 1 plus 1 minus 1, 0 problems. You see, as I finalize, I want to tell you one thing. You see, it is nurtured over natured or nurtured plus natured, as long as nurtured is captured. For the future, we will all be well structured. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I rest my case.
Second opposer, you have 3 minutes to make your submissions.
Allow me to correct you. 1 plus 1 minus 1 is 1 and not 0. You've told us about how food gets spoiled because of short shelf life and whatever. But this food never actually gets to the shelf. Do you know why? Sub-Saharan Africa has an estimated 37% food lost between harvest and storage. So our food, we plant enough food to feed all of us, but we don't harvest it on time, that we leave it in the farms until the rains come again and the food gets destroyed. So the food is there. The food is there, it's just getting spoiled in our farms. And you know what the rich people are doing? They're buying more food than they can eat. You buy 2 loaves of bread, you eat a half of it and throw away 1.5 of it because it got spoiled, you kept it in the shelf and you are not eating it. But we want to make more. We have this consumption ideology that's always with us humans. We want to produce more and more so that we can fill our shelves and say, yes, we have food. But you know what? We don't need this extra food. We have enough food to feed all of us. I like your statistics. You told us that 828 million people are going hungry according to UN statistics. But the same FAO tells us that we waste enough food to feed 2 billion people. Way more people than the ones who are hungry. So we have enough food. We do not need these GMOs, but we want to make them, we want to produce them and say they are better. We are producing solutions to problems that don't exist. If we want to solve food insecurity, we can channel this money into making better harvest and storage facilities for the food that gets spoiled in sub-Saharan Africa. The West and the East and the developed world can stop wasting food and stop buying food that they will not eat. Look at this. Discovery, development, and authorization of new genetically modified organism cost $136 million. Why can't we just channel this money and make proper storage for food facilities for the food that is being spoiled in the farms in sub-Saharan Africa? Why can't we use this money to campaign against food wastage in the developed world? Then we have enough food for everybody. You talked of climate change. Do you know how much methane is produced by wasted food? When we waste food, when we throw away food, when the food spoils in the farm, that food rots. And in its rotting, or when it ends up in landfills, it produces CH4, which in other words is methane. And we both know the effects of methane. I do not have to go into that. So we are really putting more things to damage our climate. We are increasing our methane production by producing more food so that we can waste it again, and it can produce methane, and we can ruin our planet completely. Ladies and gentlemen, genetically modified foods are a solution to a problem that does not exist. We can eat our food well, we can manage our consumption of food, and there's food for everybody. We do not need to make more. My name is Winnie Johannes.
It is now time for audience questions. Policies versus ignorance. Do we have a question for the proposers?
The second speaker, you spoke of the policies during the Moi era. Which policies have come up during our era? You've not vividly explained and expounded on your point on the current policies that are put in place by the government. Would you please quite explain that furthermore?
Do we have a question for the opposers?
My name is Prince Roy from Upper Hill School, and I had a question. Can you please elaborate further on the things that bring out this, the ignorance in our people?
Third proposer, the floor is now yours.
Increased climate change impacts in Kenya are due to poor climate policies and plans implemented by the government, as opposed to general ignorance by communities. Yego Nehemiah from Moi Forces Academy, and I am here to strongly propose on this motion. To your question, how can we account for ignorance in the age of information? Well, data Rebuttal of 1st February 2022, 42% are currently knowledgeable on current affairs while 58% are not. This is Kenya. And among that 42%, we can say that roughly half of them are misinformed. They do not have the right knowledge on these climate impacts, and they do not have the right knowledge on the policies which are given by the government. And as our first speaker stated, according to the School of Policy, a good policy should define the problem, gather evidence, review the current policies, strategize on solutions that anticipate social response, and educate the public. If the government does not educate the public on these policies which they are putting out, the government is simply failing on the policy. The policy is poor. The government does not offer reasonable alternatives for the policies they are passing through. I will give you an example of charcoal. Charcoal in 2016, according to Kenya Forest Act of 2016, production of charcoal was termed illegal in Kenya. But they do not offer solution. As you all know, charcoal is 70% provider of energy in our homes. Without this charcoal, not many people will be able to heat water, cook food. In general, you get what I am talking about. So by cancelling charcoal or implementing a ban on charcoal, what does this leave the community with? Alternatives which are not quite economicable to these people, which is not very applicable. Currently, 51% of Kenyans are living below the poverty line. This means that someone in the rural area earns less than 3,000 and someone in the urban area earns less than 5,000. So, the solution after banning charcoal they offer us is gas. Well, gas is not, it's very expensive to say. Currently, a 6 kilogram gas goes for roughly 3,700 shilling. So how do you expect this person who is in the village to be able to buy this gas? If the government does not give you an equally possible solution after banning the thing you are used to, then it makes the policy poor. Ms. Kanyiva Muindi, a research officer with the African Population and Health Center, there are more than 16 organizations tasked with managing charcoal in the country, and this leads to confusion, with other areas saying that selling of charcoal is illegal. No, making of charcoal is illegal, while selling and using of charcoal is legal. This identifies that the government policies, they don't have effective implementation because they are giving several people this opportunity to implement, and this causes confusion in the community. With that, I rest my case.
Third opposer, you have 3 minutes to make your case.
My elegant name is Roy Bong from the Great Jamhuri High School. We are saddened by questions asked, but I have no choice but to answer them. Beginning with one, it was asked about information. Well, you yourself know that you ought not to release waste from industries into rivers, cut down trees. That's information you know, but you choose to ignore. That's what you're talking about. I want to talk about manufacture of goods. You see, emissions and mostly burning of fossil fuels to produce energy in making of cement and iron. These industries are the same ones that emit these gases and release harmful substances into our very own Mother Earth. That is ignorance. There are policies protecting them, but we choose to ignore them. Simple. Now, let me talk about ground rules. You see, my sons, ground rules are set, but my sons here are disobedient. And they represent the very many disobedient citizens that we have out there who ignore these methods to reduce our impacts from climate change. Simple. Now, another thing, for strategic ignorance of climate harm to exist, people must choose to ignore costless information on climatic Simple. Again, just quick, maybe you can take your pen and write this down. Do you know what you eat, my hungry opponents? How much you throw away? All that contributes to greenhouse gas emissions. You're not writing? Policies and plans are set. They are set, we agree, they are set, that's true. But listen, why are there no changes? Because we don't listen, we ignore. What is to ignore? It was told here earlier. Simple. You see, finally, productions of emissions. Oh, actually, simple again. You talked about NTSA and all that. You talked about unworthy road vehicles. Yeah, that's true. Even those drivers choose to ignore the rules and drive them on the road. Simple. Thank you.
Proposition, you have 1 minute for closing remarks.
Wayne Dacia for the final time today. Opposers, where are your ears? I clearly stated ignorance, lack of knowledge. It is not the aspect of considering to do it or not. So, my father, understand the definitions before you raise your argument. And as you tell me to spare my 60 bob on the newspaper, spare me your cliche arguments while bringing arguments having not understood the motion. A question was asked, whose job is it to educate the public? The answer is the government. How does the government educate them? With their policies. We stated the principles of a policy. You define the problem. You gather evidence. You educate the public. You strategize on solutions.
Opposers, 1 minute to wrap up your argument.
Good afternoon, assalamu alaikum. Once more, it is I, Wahia Jeffrey. It's lunchtime. Do you know what I'm about to serve them? The truth sandwich.
Because you gave very valid points out. Of course, time was not at your end. We now start looking keenly into deeper details. For example, MFA at the start, I think you want to borrow from what Jamhuri did, especially from Judah. I think I'm addressing Wayne. that you can be able to summarize as much as you can the key terms, all right? Key terms. For example, there's some words you don't really have to define, all right? So for Judah as well, government. I think you're talking about government. We don't need to define government. Everybody knows that those are more general terms. So look for the key terms so that when you're defining, you just get in that. So MFA, the defining terms, just summarize so that you're at least able to give 2 or 3 points. But at least you ended well by saying my other colleagues will now give us the points. But we would have wanted you as a first speaker to quickly define as your role and give your first submissions. On the other end, make sure you get the key terms. But overall, good in terms of explanations. What I must tell you though, Judah, learn how to close. When you see Wayne cut short by the bell, he ends very well by saying, my other team will do that. When the bell goes on you, you almost lose it, okay? So that is looked at. When we come to the second speakers, 2 things. 1, excellent cross-examination for you, Miss Sarah and Geoffrey, and excellent ways of delivery. I think for you, Miss Sarah, I still remember the song. Can you help me? It was poor policy, poor plan, and? Poor implementation. Wow. You see, even they know it's like a song. You can be a good teacher. We need to talk about that. Anyway, Geoffrey as well done. I love the fact that I still remember your truth sandwich. Now, Nehemiah, good answers as well from MFA. I think I love the fact that you came and gave your answers well. What I can advise you when it comes to speaking as much as you want to do, shorten your sentences. You had long sentences and you can manage to shorten them. For example, to say to be able to buy, you can get a word like to afford and you're gone. So you can say as many things as you can because you could tell time was not on your end. Roy as well on the other end, I felt like you're a father to us as you have been referred to. But it's just a unique style that you have. I like it. It's everybody has their own way of delivery, but well done as well. You understood your role and delivered to your team. Let's wait for the results.
Wayne and Judah, as the first speakers, you really did a good job in trying to ensure that we understood the motion. You had done a lot of research. You helped us understand what the motion was all about. Unfortunately, the time was not enough, but I know you'll check on that next time. The second speakers, Miss Sarah and Geoffrey, that was excellent. You really worked hard to convince the audience, especially Miss Sarah with the poor policy, poor plan, poor implementation. Quite catchy. Congratulations on that. Geoffrey, of course, you tried to show us how ignorance is the problem. Yegon answered the question really well, but I feel you could have given more examples. Roy, you got our attention. I like how you inserted some humor to execute your presentation. Excellent job.
Moy Forces Academy gathered 75%. A round of applause for them. And Jamhuri High School, 76%, making Jamhuri High School the winners of this debate. Today, the debate circle is not just the home of high school debates, but the home of information as well. I am sure we have learned a lot, and if you'd want to keep learning a lot, do keep it Debate Circle. But from me, Stephanie Oshira, your host, and us here at the Debate Circle, it is goodbye until next time.